Hey, buddy.
Hey, Ethan, how are you?
How are you?
I'm okay. Just getting all these notes for some reason. Uh,
Notes
okay,
from your
here.
agent telling you not to do this show?
No, from Zoom.
Is that a Goonies hat you're wearing, Mark Marshall?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes. One never forgets his contributions to the Goonies. And the man who made so much magic happen with Donner, Spielberg, and the Goonies, Mr. Mark Marshall. How are you,
Contributions,
buddy?
small though they were.
Let's not underwrite the work that you contributed, the magic you brought to the set. Look, it's a very colorful resume. As you know, Mark Marshall worked on everything from Empire Strikes Back to Harry Potter, and in that trek was some Goonies, the Free Willy franchise, a couple of other fun things. And look what I'm holding here: the legendary book
Oh,
by
God.
Mark, available to everyone. Amazon is the quickest way to get it, and we're here to actually read some of it. I was looking through this, and one of the segments I was just reading, Mark, if I may just jump right to it, is
Sure.
the sequence where Frank Marshall, who I just saw at Peter Jason's memorial not too long ago and spoke with, but there's a sequence where he's carrying the Olympic torch
Yeah.
in front of, like, what was it, Fox? Was
Fox.
it Pico?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize he had done that. How does one sign up for that? How do you get to carry the Olympic torch? There's got to be like a process where people apply, and the Olympic, like, administrators go, well, this guy's not good enough. This guy is good enough. This guy's just wants to do it. This person's battling cancer and Parkinson's, so we want him to do it. Isn't there like probably a process of evaluation with that in some way?
Yeah, I'm sure, but I think in Frank's case, he knows everybody.
I
You
know he
know,
does. I know he
you
does.
know, the guys
He
who
spoke.
guy who
What's that?
knows Jimmy Buff, who knew Jimmy Buffett, and I mean, I think he had a way into everybody.
He did. Jimmy Buffett makes an appearance in a couple of the Jurassic Park films, carrying a margarita, of course, absolutely shameless. I also think that it might have helped with the establishment of Margaritaville on City Walk. Not too far where our bunker is on the Universal backlot, there's a Margaritaville, and Frank might have had something to do with it.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. You like working with Frank?
Oh, I love Frank. He was so easygoing, knew so much about post production, about everything. He was kind of my role model for post production,
Yeah.
and uh, he taught me a lot just by um, example. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have, and Frank is the one who hired me, or got me hired as Steven's personal projectionist on Raiders of the Lost Ark because we had the same last name, although we're not related. And he put in a good word for me, and I got the job.
So you can thank Frank for that. And when you say Spielberg, or when you say Steven, you mean Spielberg, of course.
Yes.
It's funny because Bill Daly always says, "Well, I'm Bill Daly, not related to Bob Daly," and I'm like, Bill, let other people figure that out. You don't
Yeah,
have to tell. You don't have to tell everyone. You still did. You still have an epic Warner Brothers vice presidential resume. But he's always.
absolutely.
But I have to say, Frank Marshall, for what it's worth, made a very, very cool, endearing tribute to Peter Jason. You cannot explain what Peter Jason meant to most of us. It's funny because he was so likable, and his connectivity, because he was likable, ran so deep with so many powerful people. People knew Peter Jason as like this familiar face, like, oh, he's John Carpenter, They Live, or with Walter Hill as the racist bartender. Hundreds, he had over 200 credits, but because of who he was, everyone loved him. And Frank Marshall, I think, went back decades with him and told some very endearing stories from when they were kids. And, Peter was like a godfather to Sean. And, I think, Mark, you were here for some of that.
Yeah.
And he was just, especially when things got tough, Peter Jason, and things got tough for Peter Jason around the same time. But it's amazing how he stepped up as a human being for so many of us, despite what he was going through. And it was only revealed in, like, a quiet lunch at Lito's. Lito's Pizzeria, by the way, one of the best, was kind of his secret headquarters for him and the Carradines. And I think they all played golf across the street, really, or down the block. And that's how it became that way. But, he would only reveal occasionally on those quiet lunches what his own strife was doing to him. But to hear Frank Marshall talk about him. And I got to tell you, too, in addition to Frank Marshall, Walter Hill got up and spoke. John Carpenter got up and spoke. And the thing that told me the most, I mean, everyone did a tribute. Martha Plimpton from Goonies
That's
did a
right.
song, did a song. But here's how you know he really meant something to them. It wasn't, those weren't political appearances. Those people not only spoke, and it was at the Writers Guild, they stayed for the reception to talk about him. They all stayed. And my kid, I get emotional thinking about it because my kid will forever owe a debt to Sandy King Carpenter, John Carpenter's wife, because as you know, they've contributed to her charity and stuff. But when she walked up to say thank you for that, it was just hard for any of us to keep it together. And Sandy Carpenter was so gracious towards Sean, and she said something that I think Frank Marshall would also echo, which is Peter Jason made everyone think he was their best friend. That's how he lived. And I did talk to Frank a little bit afterwards, and he goes, there's just an incredible hole with all of us. It's funny because in our business, there's this misevaluation that people do, rookies do, insensitive human beings who don't amount much do. They tend to rate people based on what their job is or what they perceive their value to be through such job. And Peter Jason was a low key guy, but you could never really fully gauge how beloved and powerful he was as a human being. And it was just so nice to see people um, come out and love him. And Frank was one of those guys. And I also told the story that you told me about Spielberg sending you out to see Walter Hill after he burned down part of his beach house. Is that in this book? Please
It
tell me
is.
that's it.
Wait a minute. I think it is. Yeah, it is.
And you thought, oh my God, Walter Hill is going to kill me. He's going to
Yeah,
murder me. And he couldn't have been nicer, of course.
he was.
Yeah. And Walter was also very gracious. Walter's not seen as a people person by most. John Milius, who I worked for, had written the Extreme Prejudice script for him. So I kind of used that as an in to thank him for his words. He spoke on Peter's behalf. And you gotta remember, like these guys, like John Carpenter and Walter Hill, they're not gonna spend 1 minute doing something they don't want to do.
Oh,
Right. And they stayed for that whole reception, talking, laughing about everyone. Frank did too. Frank did too. Um, but you do tell some really good stories about Frank in this book. You tell some great stories about Steven. Martin Casella and I talked about you a bit too, because Casella was also Spielberg's assistant for a bit on Raiders, which almost
Marty
killed
remembered
you.
me?
Yeah, we talked about it quite a bit. We got to get you guys both on the ground at the same time, maybe at a
Oh, I'd
Christmas
love to.
Carol this year, because he had his. All you Spielberg vets, first of all, have really, I think, what is genuine love for the guy.
Yeah.
But you all have your stories too, because Casella had to make it work on Raiders and used cars, and then decided he was going to be an actor and got cast into Poltergeist. And I think he kind of looks like Spielberg. I think
Yeah,
there's some traits about him that Spielberg saw and goes, "That's kind of he kind of looks like he could be a cousin or something." Put him in the. Casella's actually very good in it. He earned his way into that movie,
he
but
sure did.
anyway, so why don't you give me a page here, Mark, and I'm going to try and do a reading from your book without butchering it. Now, keep in mind, everyone, I'm a dyslexic. Last time I tried to read from Mark's book, it didn't go so well,
Oh,
and
that's no.
and he's about to forgive me for it. But I, who hold myself to standards, realize I kind of botched it. I will say though, on the onset, this book is incredibly entertaining.
Oh, thank you.
This book is certain, and I'm not saying that because I'm mentioned in it. I'm not. I'm not saying it because I'm saying it because it is actually what I love about this is the genuine insight. You know, another great book was director Michael Winner sent me his book, and you know what I realized is that there is something that's in some of these narratives that really get to the meat of some of the issues, the production histories, and you do a really good job of that. Because
Oh, thank you.
when I started in the career department, I had a similar role where, like, when you started off as Spielberg's assistant, where people probably didn't see us, so they would say anything in front of us. It
Hmm.
was like we were part of the office furniture. And it's amazing what you could pick up. Now, you accelerated through the ranks, ended up as the production supervisor on Harry Potter and producer and all these great projects. Some of us had derailed careers. I always tell Bill, I always joke around with Bill. I said, I'm famous for working on all the movies that the celebrities would like to forget they did. Keanu Reeves on The Replacements, Arnold on Collateral Damage, all the movies they would like to tune out and forget. That's where I sort of thrived in
And
the
there's value in that.
yeah, I thrived with the mediocrity of it all. But what's cool about it is the you have kind of like an everyday man's perspective. There's no assistant making your calls. You're not being driven to the studio. No story editor is reading the scripts and giving you their notes. Like you are the one doing these things. And with that comes like a realistic, real life perspective that makes the book so much fun to read.
I appreciate
And
that.
and look at there's a photo of the back. That's Mark, folks.
In the
That's
Lucasfilm editing room.
that's Mark getting it done. Did you by the way, did you work interface with Marsha Lucas at all?
No, I met Marcia, but not. She was up in Northern California.
What a genius.
Luke, the Force will be with you.
We were talking about the magic of Marsha Lucas and how, like with Star Wars, when she got into the editing room, she was a natural editor, by the way, is. There's no past tense about it. How like Luke had two trench runs and she's like, this is too much. He's gonna run the gauntlet once with all the stakes stacked up. And then how like she installed the idea of a clock, like we need a countdown, like we need this base to fire on the rebel base, and we have all the footage from earlier in the film. Like that's all reused shots from the Alderaan sequence. And I just thought, God, you can never underestimate the genius in the post production rooms, you know?
Well, not only that, but in the script process, she is the one who told George that Obi-Wan had to die because George wanted Obi-Wan to live.
Right.
And then they storm the Death Star. And she said, no, he has to die. And fortunately, George listened.
Can you imagine telling Alec Guinness, hey, look, Sir Alec Guinness, change of plans. You're going to be free to do that Bridge on the River Kwai too, after all, because we're going to kill you in this. Can you imagine being the one to kind of tell him, like, Alec, the master of stage and screen? I mean, Peter Cushing's in that too. He was a bit of a legend. But
Yes, absolutely.
Alec Guinness has been Kenobi. Is be like, can you
Well, he
imagine
made
that?
his millions, so I don't think he complained at all.
Well, he's a pro, so at the end of the day, he's going to go with the decision. But can you imagine? I wonder what that conversation was like. Do you ever wonder
No,
that?
yeah, I mean, he was an actor, though. I mean, he knew, you know,
Yeah,
the
I,
basics of
I
drama and
I'm
conflict.
sure. Alec Guinness had worked with David Lean multiple times. I'm sure he understood where Lucas is coming from and probably got it. And Cushing was probably undoubtedly a sport. I mean,
Oh
Cushing.
yeah,
I don't think Cushing ever met a paycheck he didn't like. Except, and I'm a big fan of Cushing. I say that with about him and Christopher Lee and all these Hammer vets that they were genuine jobbers. Like John Milius always told me this about Max von Sydow, that Max von Sydow's biggest goal was to remain employed every day. Then it was what he was doing, but he
yeah,
he felt like things were spiraling out of his artistic control. If he was unemployed for a week or 2 weeks, he'd go nuts. And I think a lot of those jobbers are like, I need to be working. Like the same as if they're like cleaning a chimney chute. Like I need to be on the job today. And
yeah. I think Michael Caine was the same way too.
yeah, God, Michael Caine. I just saw him in Sleuth recently. You ever work with Caine?
No, unfortunately, I would
Hey,
love
can
to
I
work with him.
can I ask you? You got to Spielberg. It during Raiders of the Lost Ark or after?
No, it was during pre-production on Raiders.
During pre-production. And somebody, was it Martin Casella? Somebody said Klaus Kinski was up to play the role that Wolf Kroger ultimately played. Can you imagine that having Klaus Kinski on that set?
I I think he would have been unwieldy. I mean, I don't think Stephen could have reined him in.
Isn't that kind of crazy to think about it? But is that true? Did you hear that too when you were
No,
working on
and
it that class?
I just remember who, the U.S. casting sessions with
Yeah.
Selleck and Sean Young and Tim Matheson and those actors.
Now, who do you think was the best before it went to Ford? Because obviously Ford is the part, but
Well,
who
Selleck
did
was
you
the one they settled on.
right?
The George and Stephen both wanted, and then of course it was Bob Daly, uh, not Bill's brother, that said, "No, we've got an option on Tom, and we're going ahead with Magnum PI." So that made Tom unavailable, and that's why they went to Harrison. But
Mm,
he did a great uh, audition
yeah.
in the hat and everything else, and I mean, it would have been Indy with a mustache, and would have been different.
Hello, Murphy.
We ended up doing a screen test with Tom Selleck and Sean Young, and it was really, really good. I mean, they were both terrific actors, and it turned out really well.
Look, I did what I did. I don't expect you to be happy about it. But maybe it can do us both some good.
Why start
Just
now?
shut up. Shut up and listen to me. Now, I need that piece your father had. So,
Selleck's not a bad choice, and he was
No,
I liked him in High Road to China. I know the movie gets kind of blasted, but I thought he was pretty good in some of the Lassiter and but after Selleck, how was Matheson? Could you see Matheson doing it?
no, he was too boyish. I mean, he was still. What character did he play in?
I was
Was it
gonna go
Autumn?
there, right? Animal House, right? Was
Yeah,
it a he still had the kind of the Animal House vibe, like he's a
yeah. I mean, he was
prankster on a
only
college
what
campus.
3 years removed from Animal House, so
Yeah.
uh, yeah. I couldn't really see him. I mean, besides, I saw him more as Johnny Quest at that point, since he was the voice of Johnny Quest.
Mhm.
And that's how I always remembered him.
You know who was up for the part and up to his death swore he had a meeting with Steven Spielberg up at his house and had cake with him was Jeff Conaway. Jeff Conaway was under the impression, he was under the realistic impression, at least how he explained it to me, that he was up for Raiders of the Lost Ark and he was close to being a finalist in the mix. That's how he understood it.
He,
Now,
yeah, he very well could have been. And the thing is, he said he had cake with Steven, and that was Steven's way of auditioning at the time, was baking with the people auditioning, in the morning, and then in the afternoon, the people auditioning in the afternoon, along with the staff at Lucasfilm, would eat the whatever they made in the morning.
that is an awesome way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, very unique. And
Did you?
Stephen wanted them to get their guard down, and not,
Yeah.
he wanted to calm their nerves and everything else, and I think it was a great way to do that.
Yeah, Conaway, who I loved a lot, he swore by that. He said, I was in the final. He thought he was in the final five for it. And, these things go a certain way. And this is, I think, after Grease, when he played Kaneki.
Yeah.
I could see him doing it. Is he the best call? No. Ford is obviously the dominant call, and he proved it. But I mean, it's not completely outlandish to see him in the running for that.
No, not at
Um,
all. The thing
but
is, Stephen was a huge TV nut. When he was
yeah,
off in Tunisia and London shooting Raiders, I would send him a TV guide in the London pouch. He would mark every show he wanted me to record, and then I would sit at the Betamax at the office every night and record all these shows for him, and then send them over. So he I'm sure, and with all the films he saw, it was probably Steven's idea to bring Jeff in.
yeah, because he's always been super well versed in what's happening entertainment wise. Now, what were
Yeah,
some of the shows you were obviously so okay? So if we're talking Jeff Conaway. So Conaway shows up in a lot of movies too, like Pete's Dragon, The Eagle Has Landed, movies you don't remember him in. He's in, and extensively in some cases. But I'm wondering what the show was. I'm wondering what he was doing on TV. Because Welcome Back, Cotter was the sort of the thing he said that Travolta stole his performance from. Conaway always said that Travolta lifted Welcome Back, Cotter from, and I think it's the stage production agree. Maybe I'm misremembering, but what was Spielberg? What was Spielberg having you record? Please tell me. Please
Well,
tell me
he
it was
loved.
Simon and Simon.
No, it was. I mean, it was things like the Tonight Show
Yeah.
and the nightly news, things like that. And then
Really?
once in a while, if there was a TV movie, I would record that. Was Taxi on at the time?
Yeah, probably.
I think it was sitcoms like Taxi, and
That's where. That's probably where.
yeah, it could be. But he was very eclectic in what he wanted. But then he also wanted the comfort food type of shows like the Tonight Show and
Hmm.
all. And he was voracious in that stuff.
Well, you were the one who pointed out that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg make an appearance at the beginning of Temple of Doom with Dan Aykroyd
Missionary
walking.
missionaries,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Ah, Dr. Jones. I'm Weber. I spoke with your assistant. We've managed to secure 3 seats. But there might be a slight inconvenience as you will be riding on a cargo full of live poultry.
Is he kidding?
Madam, it's the best I could do at such short notice. Heavens, aren't you Willie Scott, the famous American female vocalist?
Oh, yeah, Jen. Nice try, Lao Shay.
Where else does he show up besides Blues Brothers? Where does Spielberg show up?
He's in Gremlins.
Where?
He's sitting. There's Hoyt Axton is at a inventors show, and Steven's sitting in a some bicycle contraption with a broken leg, and he's wheeling past the camera. Um, but he wasn't in everything.
Mm.
Um, I'm trying to remember other things he might have been in. He
Is there
wasn't a
any?
Hitchcock, that's for sure.
No, he wasn't. Is there any truth that Harrison Ford appears in E.T. as the teacher?
Hmm. Yeah, it was a scene cut from the film,
Yeah.
and you can see it. Actually, it's on YouTube. I think you can find that edited scene,
Yeah.
but
Because
you never see his face. You see him like Elliot did from like here down.
hmm which is how most of us remember our teachers, right? And Charlie Brown,
Yeah.
and it's sort of a Charlie Brown kind of
Wah, wah,
logic to
wah,
it.
wah, wah,
Yeah,
wah.
exactly. Like, is the teacher even in this room right now? I'm too busy reading the. Anyway, it's so funny to hear that. So in this book, Goonies, Droids, and Killer Whales, you get into some pretty extensive production moments. But do you have a movie that you absolutely loved working on? I mean, you're going to probably say Harry Potter, which is, I think, back around the time we were both at Warner Brothers. That's probably around the I'd only been at Warner Brothers a year when that went into production, and I think Paulie Cohen was the exec on that, if I remember right. Wasn't she the point person for feature development? Paulie Cohen was the one who shepherded it.
I think it was Lionel Wigram.
Lionel was also there. You know who would know? Bill Daly would set us straight. He would shame both of us for not being able to call out the right fucking executive. He'd bury both of us on that. You say Lionel, very easily could have been. I'm going to say it's Paulie Cohen. We'll get him back at some future date to compare notes on who was
Okay.
actually. But what do you have a movie from like the 80s first per se, like when you first started in the business that you absolutely loved working on more than anything else?
Well, I think it would have to be, if it's the 80s, it'd have to be Goonies because it was the first time that I was actually included in the process of making a movie. I originally went up to the location in Astoria
Hmm.
in October of '84 because I had a week's vacation coming, and I asked Steven if I could go up and watch them shoot, and he said, "Well, it's fine with me, but get Donner's blessing." And Donner ended up saying if I was crazy enough to go up to watch him shoot a film, then he was paying for my plane ticket, and he did, and then the second day, I was on vacation, I was just going to be observing, and the second day he put me to work and I became part of the crew. And then, of course, when we returned to LA, because I stayed for the rest of the location shooting, when we returned to LA, Steven was directing second unit. So I was with Steven every day. And it was my first experience with a film family that has remained a family to this day. We still keep in touch, and I saw a couple of the cast members last year at the 40th anniversary celebration in Astoria, and
Yeah.
so the memories of that are so thick that and so joyous that I'd say, without hesitation, that has to be it.
I'm going to say Donner is an incredible place to start. I've never heard, I had minimum interfacing with Donner at Warner Brothers, other than we talked once over the Omen poster, I remember. Um, but I have to say, that is such a great place to start. I don't know anyone who has a bad Donner experience, except maybe Joel Silver towards the end of the Lethal Weapon thing. But even Joel Silver would probably have to tell, in all fairness, that Donner was magic. Um,
You, yeah, earlier you were talking about Peter Jason and how
yes.
everyone loved him. Not a bad word. You and I both know in this business that the word gets around quickly
Correct.
about who is genuine and who's not, who's difficult and who's not. And Peter was one of the great ones, and Donner was as well. Dick was he was loud. He had that booming voice. He had a great laugh, and he treated everyone um, with respect, and we gave it to him in return. It,
Yeah.
it Dick was a very rare person in this business, along with Peter and maybe Paul Walker and Hanks, who's of course still alive. Um, there just aren't many people like Donner.
Definitely a genuine character in the history of our business who you were rooting for. You have some, I think you have a photo in this book from the Twilight Zone he directed with Shatner,
Oh yeah,
the one that scared you to death. It's the
yes.
airplane 20,000. What is it?
Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
Yeah, one of the better episodes, I would say. Actually,
I agree.
I love that they do it on Saturday Night Live. Occasionally, they bring it back in a sort of a Saturday Night Live sense. It's just
Yeah.
it's so iconic that you can't help but get away from it. But it's interesting to think that Donner and John Williams had both worked on things like Gilligan's Island, and I think when they got a chance to do features and the features they wanted to do, they understood. They understood what it took, and they understood that people should be respected. And I think that's a great place to start. Goonies is a great place to start. A pirate movie with a great cast, and it's Spielberg producing, right? With
Hmm.
Donner directing.
Yeah,
Oh
executive
man,
producing. Harvey Bernard produced it, who also produced The Omen. So,
yeah.
Dick was very loyal, and uh, it's just, Dick paid his dues in television.
Hmm.
And when he got the meeting for The Omen, it was through his agent, Eddie Rosen. And Dick, from from that moment on, um, was Eddie's biggest supporter and put him in all his films.
Yeah.
And Dick had such loyalty to people, and that was reciprocated.
And it's an incredible break because that was a very different script before Donner took it on. And the changes he made, and you got to give Alan Ladd credit too, because Alan Ladd was actually calling the shots on that,
Yeah.
representing the studio. And Alan Ladd too, who had a hand in Star Wars. He really did seem to trust the artists, even if he didn't understand what the art was about at first. He seemed to really believe in the people. Like he certainly believed in Lucas because when they came back, he did not understand the Star Wars script, but he said, I believe in this guy can do it after American Graffiti. And look, I loved, to a degree, I love THX 1138. I think that's a pretty captivating concept for an idea. He got bashed for doing it, right? Like I remember
Yeah.
Warner Brothers asked for the money back or something from a deal, or there's some sort of intrepid bit of bullshit on that movie. I don't. Coppola can tell you the story. Maybe Milius could tell me the story too at some point. But there was some kind of blowback, and Ladd believed in it. Believed in Lucas as an artist,
Mhm.
and clearly, when Donner presented his concept, because there was all this spiritual, natural stuff going on, like gargoyles coming to life, and God, what a great movie that is. And I heard Donner recently talk about how they came up with the music. Like that gothic chanting that still unnerves some people today, and how he's going like, I don't think they got the soundtrack. And he sat there and he started to hear him do it to the movie. And he was like, he got like chills. He was like, there is something to be said, like conceptually, you can put pieces of a movie in play in a conversation and people don't get it. But when they see it,
Hmm.
and Donner was one of those guys, man. So Donner remains a favorite in the Mark Marshall
Oh,
archives.
Dick was a mentor, a father figure, a great filmmaker,
Hmm.
and I miss him every day. But he left such a mark on the movie world and on audiences around the world. So, um, I'm sure he would be thrilled that and Goonies became such a cult favorite. It
Yeah.
didn't do that great when it came out financially, but it has grown over the years with kids who saw the movie when it was released, growing up, having their own kids, introducing those kids. Last year was the 40th anniversary, of course, and June 6th and 7th, or 5th, 6th, and 7th, was a big celebration in Astoria. And um, I think there were estimated 10 to 12,000 people that came in for the celebration. 10 years before that, which was the first time I got involved, I think there were between 12 and 15,000 people estimated. So it's only grown, and there are Goonies all over the world.
You know, I love that movie as a kid. I thought it was fantastic. I showed it to somebody recently who's very pragmatic in their thinking. And I remember the first comment was, "Are you telling me this guy breaks out of his cell and just walks out of the sheriff station and puts a hat on?" And, I had to say, like, God, I totally bought that when I was in junior. I totally bought it. It's like, it's funny how, like, now we are so geared towards thinking about the hows and the whys. It's kind of nice to go back to a movie that just lets things happen,
Yeah.
and we were talking about how all the movies made in the 70s and 80s now would have that scene that explains why something is happening for the audience instead of just letting it unfold.
Yeah.
There would be now, if you did Goonies today, there would now be a scene showing the guy construct, Robert Davi, who's done this show thanks to Mark, constructing the pipe and putting himself on it, and how did the pipe get it. You'd show there'd be some sort of unnecessary scene dragging the whole movie down about him taking apart the plumbing for his toilet and sink fixtures in the cell or whatever it would be. But it's one of those movies where it's loaded with magic. I mean, come on, kids and a pirate ship, that's an automatic hit out of the park.
A real pirate ship.
That's right. And it's amazing because you were telling me you offered it up to Magic Mountain and they wouldn't take it. Those idiots.
Oh, I know. They offered it everywhere, and nobody wanted it, so it became scrap
Can you excuse my language, but can you believe that? And you said R2D2's on the ship and we found a photo of where he's on it.
on the miniature. Yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to piece together. So Toby Philpott and Dave Barclay and I had lunch. Now you know those guys from
Hmm.
they were the Job of the Hut puppeteers and real working history with Lucas and we were talking about how C3PO and R2D2 show up in the temple in Raiders of the Lost Ark
Hmm.
and how R2D2 shows up on the deck of Goonies and there's all these real fun kind of in jokes. And we
And
were
on the
wondering.
underside of the mothership too, on Close Encounters.
That's right. That's right. And you can actually see where there's somebody did a really good breakdown of that. One of the effects guys. It might have even been, was it John Dykstra? Who did that? No, it's the guy from 20.
Doug Trumbull.
Yeah, Trumbull from 2001. But we were trying to decide if there was like a C3PO R2D2 reference in Labyrinth because they both worked on Labyrinth. And you know what's interesting is they both started to think that there was, and you could see us basically fictionalizing and pushing this fictional narrative that it exists somewhere for the fans to somehow see if they can find it. Now, of course, we don't know if it's real at all, but we just thought by saying it, people are going to start saying it's there someplace, fandom being what it is. But do you have like a surprise moment like that between Spielberg, Lucas, Donner, and all your colleagues you worked with, where they smuggled in some kind of culture reference to another movie?
Oh gosh.
There's a lot probably actually that we've forgotten about. I mean, E.T.
Yeah.
obviously has some obvious ones, but
Yeah, I mean, I have some very clear memories, and I have some that are hazy at best, and some that people have
mm,
actually reminded me of. In fact, my friend Kathleen Kiefer, who was Stephen's secretary when I was there, um, gave me a photo last year because she went to Astoria with me, and it's Stephen lying in bed with scripts all around him, and he's got a pillow over his head, and I'm not sure if he's wearing anything from the waist down, but he's in his bed, and the scripts are covering a lot of things, and it that I took the photo, I guess. I don't remember taking it, but she said I took it, and it was in response to Donner calling the office one day, and Stephen not being available, and Donner, in a mock way, went over the top. He's avoiding me. He doesn't like me anymore. He thinks I'm a failure. All this stuff, and so I had to take that picture to send to Donner to show that Stephen really was sick, and so I didn't remember that at all, and she reminded me. So I'm sure there's a lot I've forgotten more than I will ever remember.
Isn't that funny? Like that a similar situation just happened to me with Warner Brothers. Somebody showed me a photo and reminded me of a meeting I was in that I had totally forgotten I was in. And it's
Was it?
interesting, and there's a lot of things I think we gravitate to. Like my favorite story about Bill Daly is when he caught Tim Burton hiding in the men's room because Sean Young was running the lot as Catwoman. He hates that I tell that story, but because I tell it so much, it's a pop culture moment all of us can identify with. For some reason, I think like we remember that, but we forget. Like it's you know what I'm talking about with the human memory.
Absolutely.
It's a complex machine, but it is funny, and that's part of why I think I love this book so much because I look through it and I remember all these great moments in all these movies and their histories that just like, oh yeah, that's right. It's kind of like going back in a nostalgic way to your childhood and remembering all the great things you saw and you witnessed. And that's one of the things I love the way you tell the story. And I should also say that Bill Daly and Sean Astin, SAG president, uh, wrote the intros to it. I wasn't
Yeah.
asked because Mark knew better.
Oh no. Yeah,
No,
you
you
might have been
definitely knew
truthful.
better. No, you wanted people that, those guys have some clout and they can also tell, they had a very extensive working relationship with you. I didn't
Yeah.
fully get the privilege they got, but we had a lot of respect for Mark Marshall in our office.
No,
But these guys
that's
really, I mean,
nice.
I remember Bill Daly telling me that he really depended on you during Harry Potter.
He sent me an email the other day that he had found cleaning out his garage, and it was him. It was a memo to the head of production at Warner's, Steve
Hmm.
Papazian, and all the departments, and then also the filmmakers in London, kind of introducing me as the guy that was going to take over for Paula Dupree Pessman, and it was so kind and over the top that I it embarrassed me in a good way, but I mean it was so. Bill has always been a champion, I think, for both of us. And
For sure, for me, for sure, for
yeah,
sure.
and Bill doesn't he doesn't suffer fools. He's very direct. He's very honest, and so we know that when he's sincere when he says something.
That's a quality I love about him is he'll give it to you
Yeah,
absolutely straight, but he also won't hold your mistakes against you.
right.
And that's a rare quality as well. I mean, he would give us you never needed to guess what he was thinking because before you could analyze what he was thinking, he would tell you exactly what he was thinking and he'd tell it right to you. And it was
That's
just so
right.
refreshing. But also, if you made a mistake, he looked past it. Like he let people be human beings and he still does that. He's walking around with an eye patch, right? Did you hear he had like a,
I did.
and I told him, I said, bro, you got to use that. I had a, when I worked at House of Blues on Sunset as a kid, there was a situation. I worked in the purchasing department, and like a glass broke, and it got in my eye, and I had to go to the emergency room, and they sent me to an ophthalmologist who took the glass out and made me wear a patch. And he goes, "You're going to be wearing
Wow.
a patch for a couple of weeks." And I was pissed off, and it's tough to drive in those things. But when I showed up at the House of Blues in that eye patch, man, all the ladies in the administration office are like, "Oh man." They're like, "You have got, is that for real?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got to wear it for a few weeks." And they're like, "That's working for you." They'd be like, "You've got to keep that on." And I would wear that around places and into meetings, and people would be like, "Who is this guy?" Like it was like a, and now I understand why it worked for Kurt Russell so well in Escape from New York. It's like there is something, and I told Bill this. I said, "Bro, there is something. You don't know it until you walk into the right room, but if you're wearing an eye patch, the whole mood changes." It's like one of the all-time great. Like I said, you got to walk around. You got to work on that. He's like, "I'm not doing your show with an eye patch, so you'll have to come back later." I'm like, "Dude, I'm telling you, rethink that." Rethink
Well,
that.
it worked for One-Eyed Willie, I'm sure.
It did. That's another one, and that's great because there's that scene actually where Sean Astin looks behind it to see
Yeah.
what's there, and it's like mysteriously sunken in. What a great character. What a great ship. What a great cast. And I'm so glad you're
Yeah.
still close to those guys. I'm looking at this thing and I'm flipping through all the wonderful photos and I'm wondering, God, I don't know what you spent on licensing for photos, but man, there are some great moments captured here. There's some great letters captured here too. And you got this photo. Is this David Prowse who signed this Darth Vader picture for you?
No, it was it was actually the guy who played Darth Vader in the personal appearances, a guy named Bryce Eller, who we
Mm.
referred to as Kermit Eller, and Kermit signed that as a joke. Um, I didn't ask for it. I was always too afraid to ever ask for an autograph from
Well,
anybody.
and this is the picture I'm referring to for those of us
Yes.
who want the book or have seen the book. I'll tell you something about that. First of all, that's really good etiquette. You should not. I mean, that's why I don't have anything signed in my house. I don't think. And when I do get it, I get it for a cause. I get it for a children's auction, a
Right.
firefighter auction, and I'm going to get a few of these signed. By the way, for that very reason, I'll hit you up. I'm thinking
Okay.
about doing a gift basket with all of our like combat radio contributors who have books,
Sure.
signed books, like a basket with everyone's book, like David Barclay's book, which is all about Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. I'll shamelessly put my own book in there because that's how I
You
roll. But all
bet.
these guys who wrote these good books, this will be really good for like a silent auction item. But it's funny because I was just on with Ralph Morris, who did Empire Strikes Back with you
Hmm.
and Return of the Jedi, and he was saying that we were talking in depth about the day they did a bogus Stormtrooper Darth Vader comic shoot to distract David Prowse because they were shooting with Sebastian Shaw. The reveal, and Prowse didn't know. So the thing was, we're going to shoot over here, and they did a thing where like Morse was saying, I'm standing there, and a stormtrooper hit me. A stormtrooper hit me, and my helmet kind of spun around. They were doing like these almost like Marx Brother esque Buster Keaton kind of. And I was thinking, God, that's so unusual because what the safe play to be would be, you schedule Prowse off, you put Shaw in for a day, and you close the set. But they all remember this story where they had to keep him busy so he wouldn't. Like, can you imagine seeing Sebastian Shaw in the makeup and the Darth Vader suit from the neck down and Prowse being like, what is this? Like, why do you run the risk of like getting Shaw from the makeup trailer to the set and back and a wardrobe? And you're keeping Prowse like glued to a set with this gimmick. Like, I'd just be like, you're off, David. And this set, well, nothing's happening there. It's locked. Don't worry about that. But it is interesting. So I was just talking about that. And when I saw this Darth Vader picture in your book, it kind of reminded me of the conversation I just had, which is actually, oh, look, here, we got a letter too. I'm shifting gears quickly. The book is so loaded with awesome moments. I'm shifting gears too fast, but there's a
Okay.
letter here from Lucasfilm. And wait, where did I go? I just flipped past it. Oh my God, this book is just too loaded with incredible. If you're a film person, this is definitely your kind of book. What's
Oh,
happening
thank you.
here with R2D2 and
That was
C3PO?
a Christmas card from Gary Kurtz, and I was a PA, so but Gary, after my visit to the Empire set in London, Gary put me on his Christmas card list. So and
Good producer. That's what
yeah,
the
I
good
like
producers do.
oh uh, going again back to an earlier conversation. I think the two people that George had in his life that really kept him on track were Marshall Lucas and Gary Kurtz. And they're both unsung heroes. And I know Gary fell out of favor with George because of the cost overruns and the day, time overruns and stuff. But Gary was a great producer and very knowledgeable.
Can we talk about Kurtz for a second?
Sure.
Because I saw him in the same light you did. I thought he was pretty good at his job, but recently, and this is convenient because he passed away, so now there's no argument to be had. But recently, I see a lot of the Star Wars camp just cutting him apart. Like Howard Kajansian was saying that, oh, I'd be following the Empire Strikes Back production, and the office would say, well, we're a day behind, but we're on budget. Then we're 2 days behind, and then we're 5 days behind, and made it sound as if that it was a free for all. on Empire because of Kurtz and because of the Kurtz Kirshner relationship. And by the way, Irving Kirshner was awesome to talk to. He
Yeah.
was so fun. My last conversation with him was in a Studio City Indian place, and neither one of us could believe we were standing in there. But he was awesome to talk to. But more on that later. But do you think that Kurtz is somewhat getting sort of a bad rap now that he's gone and can't make an argument, and it's convenient to sort of explain his, or maybe even add to his departure with some of these stories, or are all these true?
No, I would never say anything bad about Howard because he was my first mentor. He's the one who gave me my first job on a feature film.
And he's a
And I have,
hell of a smart guy. He's a
he
smart
is.
guy, and I don't think he's lying about this. But it is
No,
interesting that
I, but Gary was a filmmaker as well. Gary knew George very, very well. I think, I think Gary knew what George wanted in the film because he wasn't there every day. So he was George's proxy on the set. And I think he made some uh, decisions along with Kirsch uh, for certain things. And yeah, I mean the film was really not budgeted realistically to begin with, nor was it scheduled realistically. And I think so it was bound to go over budget. It was bound to go over schedule. And I think that Gary got blamed for that, and it wasn't his fault. He may have made a few decisions, of course, that took more time and money, and maybe George wouldn't have done that. But he served George very well, and obviously, and George was very sensitive because it was his own money in that
yeah.
production that he had borrowed from the different banks in L.A. and New York and London. And so George was fighting nerves every day for every dollar that went over budget. So it was George. I think Gary was in kind of a no-win situation.
The movies are definitely different. It's a completely different sort of production vibe on screen when Kurtz is involved versus when he's not. And I really do like the movies American Graffiti, Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars that he had a hand in.
And
Not to take anything away from the people that worked with him later. And it does seem like every Star Wars production started with a devastating storm that kind of limited. It just seems like they started behind the schedule on every movie. And, we talk about Robert Watts, who was related to Jeremy Bullock.
yeah,
Bullock had a lot of. Bullock and Watts and I caught up at the Omni Hotel before they're both gone now. But they had a huge respect for what Watts was able to navigate and around some of the craziness. And look, these things happen on these movies. With Empire Strikes Back, it was famous that they were in Scandinavia at the worst time of year and they were buried in snow a couple of days and shot from a hotel lobby. I mean, there's all these stories, and there's some mysticism to some of the stories too.
mm,
But it is interesting because I always kind of thought Kurtz was a powerful creative voice. And the ILM guys, Harrison Ellen Shaw in particular, said to me personally that Kurtz really understood what was happening there, where Lucas did not really understand.
yeah.
But Kurtz, and not to take anything away from George Lucas, that's not where we're going here.
No, not at all.
But like that, Kurtz would walk in and understand that they were building like computer processors and what that meant. And Lucas was like, "Where's the fucking shot? We have a like a what do you call that thing that drops from the Death Star? We have like a life pod that
Oh
anyway."
yeah, the escape pod. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, and I get this. Look, there's different pressures on both of them, but it is funny to talk about this now because any bank executive would cut his own arm off for the Star Wars deal to finance those movies. It's so funny to hear like there was like some sort of conversation reported that Lucas had to report to the bank that they were behind, and the bank wanted all the money back right away, and they had to get a new loan from like a bank in Boston or something to
yeah.
cover the existing loan and to make and that bank apparently had the right executives because I think they got a hell yes like in 30 seconds. Like we don't need to, like who wants out of that deal? Do you
Well,
know
yeah,
what that loan is worth? Anyway,
yeah, but sequels were uncertain then, and also you have to look at it through George's eyes. Star Wars was such a terrible experience for him
yes, it was.
between the board of directors of Fox and John Dykstra at ILM. George, you know, uh, John had a plan all along, knowing it would take a certain amount of time for R&D and to build the machinery, the camera systems and everything, and then to do the work. And George didn't quite understand that, and there was the pressure on him. I can't imagine how enormous that was. At one point, he even thought he was having a heart attack and had to go to the emergency room. Um, on Empire, the thing that Star Wars did was it bought him his freedom between the merchandising rights and the sequel
Yeah.
rights. George made a lot of money, and so that he decided to finance the film himself because he didn't want the studio dictating to him what he could do and not do. And when they were running over schedule and over budget, George thought he was going to have to go to Fox, hat in hand, and give up some rights
Hmm.
so that they could help finance it as well. And it was anathema to him. He just um, refused to do it, and so George was under a tremendous amount of pressure.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
No, he makes that very clear. And look, it to some extent with us who've worked within the studio system, it's relatable because that
absolutely,
pressure is real. We always laugh at the fact that, you could be out shooting this beautiful Western on this beautiful vista and you could be waiting for just the right sunset. And the studio is not going to call and be like, hey, gee, Ridley Scott, did you get that sunset you wanted? They're going to be like, why are you 2 days behind? We
yeah,
don't care about that. You got to figure this. It's kind of a bizarre sort of integrated relationship at times that's hurtful. But, it's funny because Harrison Ellenshaw told me that he was working days on Pete's Dragon and nights at ILM because for some reason ILM was pretty dormant during the day. They did a lot of their work at night, he was saying.
it was so hot. Well, they had a 24-hour shift at one
Mm,
point. I mean, they had a day crew and a night crew, but during the summer it was so dang hot in Van Nuys that they worked at night to
yeah.
it was cooler.
And he was saying, he did a lot of those beautiful matte paintings of like the turbo shafts and, the Ben Kenobi sequences, Harrison's, where, it's like pull the lever and why this is an unguarded thing that in a hallway, the tractor beam release, why this isn't a place where anybody can wander up and there's no sort of security required. Anyway, we bought it. I bought it. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite movies. But it's funny because that's all Harrison's work, and he said, I had to do some of the Death Star modeling because nobody wanted to do it because you had to get on your knees all day. You had to get it was so low. And anyway, I just think there's some interesting stories. And he thought Pete's Dragon was going to be the big hit. He's again featuring could be Indiana Jones, Jeff Conaway. It always comes back to Conaway, Pete's Dragon. He's one of those like
Six
villains.
degrees.
But exactly. So look, here's a letter. This might actually be what do we have here? What's this letter?
Oh, that's a really sad story, and I hope I can tell it, I think. Um,
Oh, should we skip over that, Mark? Keep it
well,
light.
no, we got after Star Wars came out, it was in July of uh no, July of 80, yeah, because it was Empire. And we got a letter from Cedar Sinai, and I don't know how I
Oh, I know the
yeah,
story.
yeah.
Continue. I'm sorry. You
Well,
should
no,
tell it.
and it was a young man who was dying of cancer, and his dream was to see Empire, and he was too sick to go to a movie theater. So Craig Miller, who was a publicist at Lucasfilm, asked George, and George immediately said yes. So we got a portable 35 projector and took the film, and Vader made an appearance, and we showed the film to him and got that letter about 2 weeks later saying that he had died, and it just makes you realize that, and I think I said this in the book that we may not you know uh, be brain surgeons and we might not cure cancer, but movies provide a release from both life and death, the thoughts of
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
And so I think it's always been a noble profession.
That's why we do what we do.
Yes.
I do know that story. It's funny. I remember walking into our office at Universal, not too far from Amblin, and Back to the Future. What is it? Not Smith's Grove. What is it?
Oh,
What's
Hill
the
Valley.
Hill Valley. And you had Craig Miller sitting in there one day.
That's right.
Remember
Yeah.
that?
Craig and I visited once in a while. I mean, he left before I did at Lucasfilm. So,
Yeah.
but we reconnected years and years later, and he's again, he was one of my mentors. He taught me a lot and gave me my first chance to write.
And look, we know what the writing option turned out for you. You're an exceptional writer. I'm holding proof
Oh,
of that
that's
in my hand.
very nice of you
Maybe
to
the
say.
greatest book since the Bible. I don't know. Read it. You can be the judge.
Well, they had
Curious.
several authors.
But what I would say, they did have several authors, including some that got edited out. Book of Judas. Anyway, more on that on another day. Here's the thing about this stuff and these appearances. I just had this conversation too. People sometimes wonder why we do a Christmas Carol where the audience, most of the tickets are comped to children battling pediatric cancer and MOSD. And this year we've got the Parkinson's Foundation in on it, the MS Foundation. People are wondering why we do this, and we do it at such cost because there is no money to be made in these things. It's all cost when you do a show like this. And someone else, the same person, was asking why we had a Darth Vader and why we had stormtroopers and I said, because, people show up at these things and they may want to meet Ron Perlman or Dietrich Bader or Paul Reiser, but they definitely know who Darth Vader is. And you can see in the red carpet photos with the stormtroopers or with Darth Vader or any of these characters, you can see that in that moment, the time frame in which that picture is snapped, that those kids are smiling. And for that brief second, however long we can stretch it out, they're not terrified. Their parents are probably not terrified. And just for that moment, they'll go back to be waiting for test results, putting their kid in an MRI tube, doing all the scary things that I myself have been through, which is why it's highly relatable. But in those moments where they get to meet Darth Vader or one of the
Spider-Man.
X-Men, yeah, it goes away. And that is why we do it. And that's why all those characters are so essential to every event we do for kids.
Yeah.
And it's, I've heard the different stories. I've heard about the Jedi saying he went to the supermarket between a gig for the library and an appearance, might have even been an appearance for us at social services, and how he was kind of like harassed, like, why are you dressed up like a Jedi? You're a grown man at the supermarket. And he's like, well, I do these appearances. And the people that were giving him a hard time, they just couldn't fathom what he was saying. They just couldn't get it. Not that ignorance doesn't run rampant around us daily, but they just couldn't get this. And I said, it would be amazing. It's an amazing thing to see when a kid who may or may not be with us at Christmas, but is with us in November at our event, gets to meet Darth Vader. Like, even for those split seconds, it's an amazing thing to witness. The smiles, the giggling, the things
wonder.
that, yes. And that was one of the things that stuck with me when we were living at the hospital. You could see the children's hospital wing, the Ronald Reagan, at UCLA out the window, and you could see that parents decorated those rooms with Christmas lights. Now, it's not Christmas, it's May. But they did it just because of what it may add, like what it may alleviate and what it may get someone to think about versus, and that's why this story about the Darth Vader appearance and seeing Empire Strikes Back, to some people, they may not be able to get their head around that, but man, do I understand that. Do I understand how big that is and how significant that is? And I think George, he maintained that practice, didn't he, before?
Oh, yeah.
Like with Return of the Jedi, before it came out, some children got to see it. If I remember right, I just think, look, let's be honest. Star Wars movies were big news when we were kids. You and I, somehow I was a kid and we're the same age and you were working on them. I don't know. You must have been hyper smart, but those were big movies when they came out, man. And the idea that you got to see that before anyone else, or just got to see it because you were asking for it and meet a Darth Vader. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What a gesture. How awesome. I'm so glad you included in that book because it reminds us of what we should really be doing in between the hash marks of our day-to-day career.
Absolutely.
We should be doing things like this when and where we can. And these things should be celebrated, and I love that that's included.
Well, thank
That's
you.
a great moment.
We were so lucky to be in an industry that really is quite small when you think about it.
Yeah.
And to be on a movie lot, I mean, we were living a lot of people's dreams. And
Yeah.
to not give back, um, is unthinkable. To make it selfish, self-serving. Um, but I think about what my mom said when after my dad died, mom went to nursing school, and she um, got her GED and then got her RN in her 50s and became a nurse for the next 30 years.
Awesome.
And at one point, she was trying to decide between maybe pediatrics or geriatrics. And I said, "Oh, mom, go with pediatrics because it's new life, newborns, and new growth." And she looked at me and said, honey, it's just as important to help people out of this world as to help them into it. And I never forgot that.
No, and what we we both know we've had to do it
Yeah.
without getting into it. We've had to do it quite often. And there is something to be said of letting people make a noble exit. And, in some cases, we've heard horror stories about people dying alone.
Yeah.
And we know that heroes like your mom have been there sometimes when nobody else would be.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that, it's funny, Mark. We both have been tremendously lucky. I got more lucky in my personal life than in my business life. You've been lucky in both as well. But I'll tell you, you worked for Spielberg, you worked for Donner, you worked for Lucas, and still you manage. When you were out here, because we were roommates for a bit, you never hesitated to help someone with something they needed. And you did everything. I remember even one day you said, when we were doing a Christmas event for kids, I remember even one day you said, I will drive to the toy depot in like the Inland Empire somewhere, and I will get the presents when we ran into more kids than presents. Like things like that. Like you did constant noble acts. With you, you were not the man who had the Spielberg name on his resume. You were the human being that could and would do anything to help someone out. And everyone knows that about you. That's not me
Well,
just saying that.
well,
Everyone knows that about you.
thank you. But, it doesn't take anything to go, a few extra feet or a few extra miles. It doesn't take anything away um, from your time, your energy, anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what you do.
No.
The way you go above and beyond, and everything you do um, doesn't enrich you one dime. In fact, it costs you.
Yeah.
Um, and but thank God you have someone, at your side like Loda, um, to uh,
Yeah.
to be there to keep you keep you propped up and go the extra mile with you.
Well, I've been incredibly lucky in that regard, and my kid is a fantastic boss in all those
Yes,
matters.
she is.
Highly motivated on who she can help, and never really lets us take a snap off. We're always constantly working. And, it's funny because I met Loda when I was still in the courier department. And I remember being in the sound department, and I forget what it was, Under Siege, some movie like that. But Peter McGregor Scott, the producer, asked her out. And they ended up going out to dinner at that restaurant in Studio City that's still there next to, God, I can't recall what it is. I've only been in there once. It's one of those. It's the type of place you think a producer would take you to make an impression. It's kind of place Spielberg wouldn't go because he's too human, but some of these other assholes would be caught dead in there for sure. But I remember, I remember he asked her out, and I remember thinking, I don't know, God damn, that guy is such a success because his name was on everything at Warner
Hmm.
Brothers. And I remember she ended up showing up at Acapulco and Burbank after the dinner date, going, that wasn't working out or something. He's passed away. But she was like, there was because there was these studio hangouts that we would all end up at, like the blue
Yeah.
collar Warner Brothers workers. This is before I got into feature development. And I remember thinking, she's like, just not the personality for me. And I remember thinking, God, man, that tells you how genuine she is, because a lot of people would have, everyone knows where I'm going with this. I was making 7.21 an hour when I started in the courier department. It wasn't glamorous. It was not glamorous. In fact, I remember on our first date, she wouldn't even really fully order because she knew. She knew. She was like, "What are we doing in this place?" And I'm like, "It's dinner," and she'd be like, "Uh huh." But it's what you do. You lay out to make an impression, and for whatever reason, man, she stuck by it. But I'll tell you, yeah, she was a very, very sought after woman in those days at Warner Brothers, and still is today, probably. Hey, tell me real quick, am I looking at a Saturn Award?
Yeah, that was 19. Yeah, I think it was 1980, honoring the 1979 pictures, and it was held at Metro Media. It was a broadcast, and
Mm.
Craig Miller and I uh, were asked to run R2D2 for he was going to be
Oh,
introducing,
right.
yeah, one of the categories, and Mark Hamill and Carolyn Monroe were the hosts, and
Wait, Carolyn Monroe, the Bond girl?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
she was one of my favorite Bond girls.
she is. In fact, I'll send you the clip. I still have the clip.
She was so
Um,
good. She was
that,
so good in The Spy Who Loved Me, wasn't she?
oh, I agree. I
When
agree.
when she's flying the chopper to blow James Bond off the highway, and she winks at him.
She's so cool.
Oh my gosh. I was like, dude, that lady has got it going on. Of course, the car turns into a submarine, and you're a Bond fan for life after that sequence.
Yeah,
But
she
anyway,
she was even better in person.
jeez, you
But
lucky son of a
yeah.
Anyway, continue.
Well, in those days, R2 had a lot of servos and stuff inside, and his voice was a cassette player with a tape on a loop.
Yeah.
And so Craig uh, did the forward and backward movements, and I did the head turns and the voice.
Right,
There
right.
were two of us operating, and it was a little scary because there were girders up in the rafters at the stage of Metro Media, which was right off of I think it's where KCAL is now. It was right off of Sunset and the Hollywood Freeway, and it was interfering with the RF reception.
Mm.
So we didn't know how it was going to go, but it actually came off really well. And Mark interacted with R2, and so those are some frame captures from the presentation, and like I said, I'll send that to you. It's
I'd
it's a
love to
fun one
see
to
it.
watch.
I'd love to see it. I mean, that's one of the things about this book and why everyone should read it. Initially, I was going to read some passages from it, but it's almost better if people, and I'll do that in the future with you, of course, but it's almost better if people just open this thing up and be surprised at what's on each page, page after
Well,
page.
well,
There's so
thank you
many
for the
great
kind
moments.
words.
It's true, man. And I know that you also there's some great stuff from The Color Purple, which Kokai Umpa worked on with you.
Yes,
Love him. Wow. There's
he's a,
just so
yeah
many. What's that?
he's great, and I tried to include the embarrassing moments as well, and there were plenty of them. Um, but I survived.
You wouldn't be the human being you are without having to survive a couple of embarrassing moments. I think it's all good for the polish, the spit and polish later in life, to go through
Yeah,
some of the. And I think I know the moment you're talking about, delivering a letter. There's several. But you know what, Mark?
the chairman of the board of Fox.
Yeah. Who was surprisingly gracious. And it wasn't, who was it? It wasn't Zanuck. Who was it that you delivered the letter to?
To Dennis Stanfill.
Stanville. Yeah. Was that? Oh man, and it was bad news too. You had to bring up bad news.
Well, it was. I guess it was okay news. I mean, it was a letter from George saying that he was going to allow Fox to distribute
Oh,
Empire.
okay. It's better news than I realized. It's better
Yeah,
news than I realized. I mean, that
yeah.
was
If
a
it had been
great
bad
deal
news,
for
I think he would
Fox.
have he would have said something.
Yeah, he would have probably been like, "You mother." Anyway, there's a great book too by anyone who wants to know about the inner workings of Fox, particularly in the late '60s. Dunn wrote a great book called The Studio,
Yes,
and
I've read
it
it.
is, yeah, it is surprisingly candid. You would never get away with that today. And what I think it was the fact that he was embedded there for a year. People just eventually started dropping their guard the way they would around
Yeah,
us when we were
yeah.
couriers.
And it was
And
their worst year.
it was their worst year. It was such a bad year. I mean, Planet of the Apes was in production. That would do some wonders, but they were all banking on Dr. Doolittle being the big hit. A good part of the book is about the Dr. Doolittle soundtrack, promotion for Dr. Doolittle.
And Hello
Dr.
Dolly
Doolittle.
as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then it's so funny, and it's such an unguarded set of like conversations that it's mesmerizing to read it. And honestly, I come away, look, a lot of the decisions in that book are idiotic, but I come away with a lot more respect for the people involved, including David Zanuck, who would go on and produce Jaws. He's in the book extensively because he was running the studio at the time for his dad, based in New York.
Yeah.
Daryl F. Zanuck
Yeah.
from The Longest
Yeah.
Day, the
And
legend.
Daryl had to fire Richard. He had to fire his son.
I know he had to fire his own son, and then his son goes on and produces Jaws. It's like one of those
And
all-time great
Esteem.
moments. Yeah, yeah. His son did know a thing or two. I hate to tell you,
Oh,
but,
absolutely.
but it's just funny. That's one of those great books of just pure candidness. It's almost like you feel like you're reading unedited stenographer's notes of all the meetings. Like, did these guys actually? And there's like a crime at one part. They're like being like watched by the FBI for like embezzlement or something. There's a one point I'm vaguely remember. Anyway, read the book, The Studio. It's all there. This book though, you can get on Amazon. Goonies, Droids, and Killer Whales. The Killer Whale, of course, refers to Willie, and I understand from Free Willy, and I understand you're going back to do a short circuit event.
Yes. Next month. Well,
Did you work
June.
on Short Circuit?
No, I didn't, but it was shot in Astoria, and
Yeah.
so the 40th anniversary of the release of Short Circuit is I don't know if it was in June, but June 6th and 7th is traditionally the 7th is the release date of Goonies. So
Mm.
so they do an annual Goonies event, then every 5 years they do a big Goonies event. And they decided to do not only the Short Circuit 40th, but also a Filmed in Astoria event to benefit the new Oregon Film Museum they're going to build. And so they're going to cover Goonies and Free Willy and Kindergarten Cop and other, and Free Willy. And so I'm going to do a couple of panels, one with Jason Richter,
Yeah, good.
yeah, and then the cast of and director and writers of Short Circuit going to be up there. David Foster is going to be up there, or Gary Foster, I'm sorry, the producer.
Yeah,
Um,
because David Foster did produce it, I think.
was it David?
David Foster, who produced the thing, I think did produce Short Circuit, maybe with Gary.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
don't know. I mean, somebody we know who directed that. Do you remember?
John Badham.
John Badham directed. God, he was a good director, man.
Oh,
Blue
he was a
Thunder,
great director. Blue Thunder, yeah,
Saturday Night Fever.
Fever, War Games.
Yeah, and War Games for sure. Blue Thunder, without a doubt, though, is one of those unheralded classics. What a great film. That is so tight. That movie is so tight.
Sir, Lieutenant Crest wants you on the pad. Sir? Sir?
Lose something?
No. You're wanted on the pad. Mind if I ask what you're doing?
No, I don't mind at all.
Oh, Murph, feeling any pressure?
Yeah.
About 15 pounds per square inch at sea level.
Where's Montoya?
Let's check the duty board. He's on days. Ooh, I forgot. Flying that new guy, Lyman Good. What?
Me. Lyman Good.
Outstanding.
Captain Maloney and Officer Reed report to operation.
All set?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sure now.
Yeah.
Airship 12 rolling out in 1959.
My grandfather was a technical advisor on that.
Oh, was he really?
Because he was chief of police. And I remember they went to I actually think I remember him taking me to the aerial headquarters because that's right off the freeway,
Yeah.
and they were doing something up there for the film. It's hard to tell when you're a kid because film guys just look like they're standing around. But I remember, Warren Oates was there, and I
Hmm.
remember saying later when I saw the movie, I didn't see it right away. I saw it years later, and I said, God, that is exactly how my grandfather talked. And those are the sunglasses he would wear, and I felt like he had my grandfather's clothes, and I found out years later that Warren Oates used him as kind of a blueprint.
There's a
And
making of. You should, a documentary. You should check it out because he may be in it.
yeah, I absolutely should. My grandfather, God damn, excuse my language. I just get kind of emotional, but I remember like, because my grandfather was used for that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Because he was also one of the innovative guys before with the LAPD, with the LAX airport police, getting them established, and then he went to be the port warden, and he had a joint task force of boats of guys on the water and on the ground, and that's where he kind of claimed met his claim to fame was as a chief of police for San Pedro. But it's funny because I was like, I swear, I look at this guy and I get his mannerisms, like Warren Oates. There's that whole thing when he says, he's like, "You're supposed to be stupid, son. Don't abuse the privilege." And I'm like, holy shit. You know how many times I've heard my grandfather say something like that? It's amazing. Anyway, so Blue
Yeah.
Thunder, John Badham, and I don't want to get away from what we're talking about, but it's good that you're doing that. I knew someone we know did have a hand in Short Circuit, and I think it is David Foster who also produced the thing.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, he was with us at Warner Brothers, Mark. I don't know if you know that. He was in 133 with Bill Daly before Foster was a regular on this show, which he was.
No,
And
I
he
didn't know that.
what he was in 133, and that's how I got him on this show initially. I called him up and I said, "The dude that delivered your mail wants him on his radio show right now." And he'd be like, "Don't remind me of that." But this is when we were at LA Talk Radio, just getting established back in 2010, 2011. And he was very gracious. He came on on a regular basis. And, I have to say, he was one of those guys, too, that even though I reintroduced myself as the dude that once upon a time delivered his mail and packages, uh, he did not care. Like Bill Daly, he was like, he saw much more in people, which is probably why he was so successful. I mean, he started off in publicity with Walter Hill writing The Getaway for Sam Peckinpah. Sam
Wow.
Peckinpah. Speaking of Warren Oates, it all comes. It's like a fucking skate ramp of a conversation around here today. Anyway, so you're going up to Historia. Short Circuit does have an iconic fan base. Obviously, Goonies. Everyone who doesn't want a piece of Goonies. You been to the house?
Yes. In fact, do you know what's going on with the house?
I heard they're like modifying the inside to look like
They
the.
completely restored it to
Oh,
the way it was in 1984, down to the crumbs, the potato chip crumbs on the coffee table,
oh,
the
see, that's
statue of David, the material on the couch. I mean, everything. It was an Emmy-winning production designer who actually did the set for The Voice and a lot of other shows. Took on the project, and I mean, they even turned the attic, which the attic scenes were filmed on stage at Warner Brothers.
right.
They recreated the attic with all the plasma ball and the paintings and everything. So it is an exact replica of the way it was in 1984.
They also did that with the Christmas Story house. I don't know if I told you. And
Yes.
Ian Petrella, who played Randy, told us on this show again that he was hired out. He's an animator now, so his schedule allows it. But he was hired out to kind of work the house and add some environment. And it makes me think with the Goonies house, how quick do you think? How quick do you think they made the offer to Josh Brolin showing up in his workout sweats and his
Uh,
Olivia Newton-John era exercise equipment? And how quickly was the offer rejected is my question. What's the
uh,
timeline on the offer being sent and the offer being rejected?
I think Josh would probably say, "I would love to be there, and I,
He
I will
probably
visit
would.
at some point." Sean's been there, Kerry Green, Corey
Hmm.
Feldman, um, uh, Key and Jeff haven't been there, and Martha hasn't been there, but um, I'll tell you, it is so impressive. In fact, they filmed the whole thing,
Hmm.
and they're doing a series right now that they're going to try to sell, I think, to HBO Max or whoever wants to buy. I mean, remember how they redid the Brady Bunch house,
Right.
and that was a huge thing on HGTV. Well, they're doing I don't know how many episodes it is, but they have filmed the entire thing, and knowing how many people love the movie and make the pilgrimage to a story, I think it's going to be huge.
I think that'll be a fun thing for people. People like that kind of sense of entertainment, and they like to break down the fourth wall.
It's a touchstone for a lot of people who have gone up there, been able to go up on the porch um, and meet the owner. They cry because it
Yeah,
was such a
yeah.
touchstone for their childhood. They even recreated the Rube Goldberg device, and it works. The
Wow,
chickens are
that's
not real,
incredible.
but everything else is real.
That's great. We were telling some fun John Matuszak stories, you and I, because you loved working with him. You said he had to apologize, right? That
Yeah,
was it.
I don't
Randall
remember
Wright.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Randall was the stunt guy on that, and he's very cool. Rest in peace.
yes,
Randall, former Marine,
absolutely.
did some charity work for us, with us, I should say. So did Corey. I hate to see people picking on Corey Feldman because when people ask me for a Corey Feldman story, I say, when we've asked him to lay out for the kids and charity, he has always done it.
Yeah,
No bullshit excuses. And I
and he
think
always will.
and he's really good about that. And so if this guy's got a pursuit, music or whatever, that maybe not meets your level of, you don't like this guy he's a better human being than I think some of his YouTube critics think. And I just feel really bad about that because he was always there for social services.
Yeah, and it hurts
Yeah.
him, but he just goes on. He moves on.
Yeah, as one does, because
Yeah,
obviously, if you've got the time to criticize, you ain't amounting to much. I hate to break it to you. Most of us
agreed.
do not have time to get involved in criticism in this way, shape, or form. But it was funny because we were telling John Matuszak stories, and John Matuszak, I guess, said something to you. John Matuszak was on Caveman too, by the way, with Carl Gottlieb. And Carl
Yes.
told this great story. It's somewhere in our archives. Carl, another great one with all the charity work we do. Carl told this story about how he was seen throwing all the equipment, like the pool equipment, into the pool in the middle of the night at the resort. Did I tell you this
Yeah.
story when they were shooting
Yeah, you
Caveman?
did.
And basically, the management calls him and goes, "Listen, Mr. Gottlieb, you're the director of the movie. You're the only one he'll listen to. Can you go down and stop Mr. Matuzak from destroying everything?" And he goes down there, and Matuzak's throwing everything in there, and Carl's like, John, what are you doing? Come on, go back to bed." And they start walking back. He calms them down. And they start walking back. And then, I guess in the elevator, Matuzak confesses. He's like, "Listen, Carl, I didn't want to do it, but everyone expects me to do it." And that's like the story from the Super Bowl, right? When the coach is like, "Don't go out. We're in New Orleans. Stay in." And nobody go out tonight. Curfew early. I want everyone in bed by 8 o'clock. I want you to get plenty of rest. And when the bus is leaving to the stadium, Tuzak's not on it. We told this story too. And he shows up at the last minute looking like he just crossed the border from Tijuana. And he's like disheveled. He's like, whoa, whoa. And the coach is like, "What are you doing, John? I told you not to go out." And he's like, "I had to go out, man. I had to. I had to go out there to make sure none of you were out there." And it's just like, how do you get angry at that? It's impossible to stay mad at the guy. But you did say, or there was a story that he apologized to you for something, although I can't imagine Mark Marshall doing anything to get anyone upset. But
No, according to Randy, he was rude to me, and I don't remember that at all, because we went up on the same flight
mhm.
for him to start work and me to start vacation, and Randy had a talk with him during the flight, and when we landed, um, John came up to me and apologized.
Can you, you know how many NFL quarterbacks want an apology from Matuzak?
Oh,
There's an endless line of quarterbacks that would have loved an apology from Matuzak, and you got one.
I got one, and I don't remember it.
But you know what, though, Mark? That's one of the things about you is you're really good when things go bad. You're really good at dusting it off like it's no big thing and get back to the work.
Life's too
And
short.
life is too short. Man, I could talk to you all day, and I know that's just not the way to do things with you. You're a busy guy, but I do love this book. I love Mark Marshall on the cover. Clearly, one of the more fun reads in the last couple of years: Goonies, Droids, and Killer Whales. Observations and anecdotes from my time with Spielberg, Lucas, Donner, and Warner Brothers. And forward by Sean Astin and Bill Daly, as we said. This is actually a classic piece of literature.
Oh, you're too kind, Ethan.
I love it. I love everything about it. Like I said, it's not because I'm mentioned in it, but I mean, I love every story. I love going behind the scenes at Amblin, and I mean, this is truly one of the great production books.
Well, thank you. I've
So
actually read a lot of them lately
mhm.
of people I've worked with or people I know in the
Yeah.
industry who have written books, and every one is valuable because I still, even semi-retired from it and kind of a long way from it, I still enjoy hearing the stories about what other people went through.
I do too. And we were fortunate enough to be there when it was still something of a golden age.
Oh, absolutely.
There was still, it was there was still a sense of mystery and wonder with it, and working at a studio and driving through the studio gates. And then I was fortunate enough to go bounce to the Warner Hollywood lot and be in an office next to Frank Darabont. And now later at Universal NBC, there is still something to it. But man, that was great to be at Warner Brothers at this time. And Bill Daly is always so funny about these kind of things. And he says, I always ask him, "You got any books?" And he's like, I don't get a book or read it unless I'm mentioned in it. He's like, I'll go right to the index. And he goes, don't hold this against me, Ethan, because everybody does it. Everyone goes back and says, what page, how many pages am I on? And God bless him for being him. We have him to thank for our friendship, but Mark
Yes.
Marshall, you are a class act.
As are you, Ethan.
You're too kind. See,
No.
in my case, when I say you're a class act, it's genuine. When you say it, you're
No.
having to really reach. But I
Listen,
do
people,
appreciate
for everything you do, you
Oh,
you deserve sainthood.
too
And
kind,
so does
buddy.
Loda and Sean.
Well, them for sure. They're definitely the role models. But I'll give the last word to you, Mark. Always, always a fun, one of our all-time favorites. A fun
Oh, that's
conversation when you're around.
well, thank
What
you.
does
But
what does everyone need to know in closing?
if they're within 1,000 miles of Oregon, would love to see you June 6th and 7th, and other than that, I'll be home. So, but I hope we can do it again.
It is tempting. I'll add a little bit to that. There's a footnote. There's a documentary produced by Mark called "Remember the Sultana," and I've been seeing it pop up on Amazon.
Yes, the 161st anniversary was 2 days ago.
Definitely a documentary we're seeing. Some great names in it. A great lot. Bill Daly also had a hand in it, on some level, helping it get done. And I remember us talking about it when it was in production back at our radio booth.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's that. All things Mark Marshall. You can find him on social media, people. He's out there getting the job done.
Well, thanks, Ethan. And if I ever get my butt in gear, then I'll have the audiobook. I know your audiobook's already out.
It is out. It is out. I got to tell you too. That was my audiobook runs 17 and a half hours.
Did you read it for 17 and a half hours?
No, I did every chapter individually, and we edited it with music and sound effects. But I'll tell you the experience when I started doing it. I thought I'll do it because I'm here, and I'm the guy that we can afford. There were other names we were kicking around. Toby Philpott from Return of the Jedi offered to do some. Roger Craig Smith, Frank Tatasciore, but I'm like, we're never going to get him. This book is 600 pages. It's a big ask.
Yeah.
So I'll just do it because I didn't expect interest to really be there, but we'll do it so we have it. And sure enough, people seem to love that format. I'm so glad we did it. I had to do.
And you have such a great voice.
But I kind of, I feel like when I listen to it, I feel like, I have to do all the characters too, and there's a couple hundred. So I have to do like Aztec warriors and samurais and more privateers, and I'm trying to, and guys walking the plank. And I it's funny because when you listen to it, you go, God, I forgot that sequence is even in the book. We just heard like a big like prison break sequence where they're disguised as plague doctors to bust out a pirate from a body cage, and I'm like, God, I forgot that was even in there. It's such, but you should do it. And I guess the short of it is when the way these things run is you should start reading it right away because it is going to take some time to get it all in the can and edit it. But this book, your book, Goonies and Droids and Killer Whales. That would be great. That'd be a great audio package. So you should definitely do it. And if I can help in some way, let me know. I'd like to get you started on it.
Well, I appreciate it. And listen, I'm going to buy No Quarter, Kill All Masters. Everyone should be buying that.
See, there you go. That's how you do it, people. Thank you for that. Enjoy it. If you do hear it, if you do get the audiobook, Mark, let me know what you think of it because it was a unique experience doing it.
I will. I'm really tuned in now to audiobooks because I've got to do one.
Yeah, and you should. Well, I want to take the time to thank the man who made Harry Potter what it was, Mark Marshall. A man who really made Spielberg look so good, as well as Donner and Lucas.
Oh.
I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, would there even be a Free Willy franchise without the help of Mark Marshall? That's a question we have to ask.
If only.
But the truth is, he's an exceptional human being with an exceptional resume and a fun book, and always great to talk to. One of our favorite people, Mr. Mark Marshall. We love you, buddy.
We love you too, Ethan. Thanks so
Speak to you
much. And
soon.
give Loda and Sean a big hug for me.
I will, man. We miss you.
You too.
They come out of darkness, sometimes with thunder, sometimes with lightning. Their presence means death.
The prison master was afraid of him. The guards were afraid of him. The town was afraid of him. Lucifer is coming for you. Rest easy, Jack Carr said in a low tone. You're in the final 30 seconds of your life. No quarter. No quarter. Kill all masters. Coming soon.